Hi, good evening. My name's Abby. As mentioned, I'm a sophomore here at Purdue, and I am majoring in chemistry through the ACS track, and I'm also minoring in English. Funky combination, I know, I get a lot of weird looks about it, but in reality, there's a lot of intersection here. But then, why, if I'm studying chemistry and English, why am I here presenting through the School of Communication right now? Well, that's because I believe that these two disparate ideas that I like to study, chemistry and English, science and the arts, they have really one big commonality, and that is communication of their work. So I have up here, for you, from Anne Roth, who is a psychologist and writer. She says that nothing in science has any value to society if it is not communicated. And that makes sense, right? If there's any crazy discoveries or interesting findings, how is it gonna make any impact on somebody if they don't know about it? And then this might be because of lack of communication or for poor communication. So what I'd like to focus on today is scientific communication, and specifically scientific communication through storytelling, which is that English side of me, right? And so I want to look at investigating how scientific experts can use storytelling as an effective method of communication for their work. And so I've told you a little bit about my story, and let's go ahead and dive into a different one. So, COVID-19, right? We're all pretty familiar with this one. We all have our own experience. These headlines could keep going and going on to the present day. I personally know where I was when I found out that in-person school was going to be postponed and then canceled. And this was when in-person was still an assumption. But then it started to be a question. Are we going to do things in person? And so with this new influx of questions and uncertainties, we have to find out, what are we going to do against this disease? How are we going to protect ourselves? And so who do we look for? To answer that question, we look to scientists and those health and policy experts. And so they were kind of put on the spot, because now they're like, oh, we got to talk to people. This is very interesting. And so with all these new stories unfolding, we have to ask the question, what are they going to tell? Who do we listen to, and what are they going to tell? So let's go ahead and dive into a first clip here, and then we can analyze what they did well with their storytelling and maybe what they didn't. So this is Dr. Redfield. He was a previous director of the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And so this actually is a Congress hearing from February 2nd. So this is like kind of early pandemic. This is actually before it was even labeled as a pandemic. So this is a lot of new information coming in. And so he's talking a little bit about the global response.
On February 26, CDC confirmed an infection with the virus caused by COVID-19 in a person who reportedly did not have any relevant travel history or exposure to other COVID patients. It's possible this could be an instance of community spread of COVID, which would be the first time this has happened in the United States. 3 cases have been detected among the Americans repatriated from Wuhan.
How do we feel? Kind of boring, right? Not ready to say it. Just, he's telling a story here, right? Where is the engagement? Where is maybe a pause for emphasis, letting people understand what he's talking about? There's nothing there. Now it's understandable, it's a Congress hearing. There's a short amount of time, he's got some information to talk about, and it's surely important, but that doesn't mean he can't still tell a story with it. See, something important about storytelling is that it makes things personal. And all information that these scientists have to share, especially him, this is important information, first person in the United States potentially infected by community spread. But how am I supposed to know that if he doesn't make it known to me as the audience? Him, the expert, telling me as the audience. How does he not make it known that this is personal to me? So this is where storytelling comes in, because it makes things personal. It makes people understand that this is something that means something to them. And so that's something that scientific experts need to keep in mind. Their work impacts people, but they have to let people know that. And so let's go ahead and dive into another clip. So this one is Dr. Red, which we see before, and this is from March 3rd, which is a week before the pandemic was labeled a pandemic. So we're still in early stages here. And he's talking to the Senate about recent spread and responses to COVID.
While the immediate risk to the general American public is low today, the U.S. government is doing everything we can to keep it low. Risk varies by exposure, and some areas of the country are now experiencing community spread. I ask you, as trusted leaders in your communities, to help us with our mission to provide clear information to you and your constituents by urging people to get the facts from CDC about how to best protect themselves and their families. Thank you.
A little bit better, right? We get a little bit more of the meaning about what this COVID-19 outbreak might mean for us. We see that there is indeed community spread, a nice little recurring theme there, a little English term for you. So yeah, we get a little bit better, and that's because he's telling a little bit more of a story, and he focuses more on what it means to the people. Granted, this is at the end of his talk, and Dr. Redford we saw in the middle of it, but I watched the whole clip, and let me tell you, that it was no different from what he was doing reading from the page, and that's why in this example, it's a little bit better in the storytelling aspect. And so the importance here is talking about what it means. So I think back to other times that stories are used in lessons. So maybe a fable, maybe in history, and that shouldn't be excluded in just those types of media. It could also hold true for science. It should hold true for science as well. There's some misconception out there that all of these like technical terms and aspects and jargon should only stay to the scientists. But if these scientific experts take these measures and steps that effectively communicate their work, perhaps by storytelling, people will be more engaged. And so that will help improve both the communication of that information as well as the retention of it. People will remember, they'll be impacted. Think back to some stories that you might remember and maybe learn some interesting trivia facts from, because those are engaging stories. And that could be the same for scientific communication. So I'll leave you with a final quote by Robert McGee, who's an American author and lecturer, that storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. Thank you.